St. Mary's is a picturesque town situated at the confluence of the Thames River and Trout Creek in the southwest part of Ontario. Among its many outstanding features is the unique stone architecture which has earned St. Mary's the nickname the Stone Town. Hello, I'm Barry Penhale. Museums such as this play an integral role in the preservation of our history. The St. Mary's Museum was built of locally quarried limestone during the 1850s as a home for George and Elizabeth Tracy. Today, this lovely building serves as a showcase for the heritage of this community. With historic ties to local quarries, architecture has been a prominent feature of this town since its formation. Of land, presently known as Perth County, was relatively unsettled prior to the War of 1812. The Huron Tract, with its base on the shores of Lake Huron and its truncated tip nudging what had been Indian lands, was ideal for settlement. John Galt, a celebrated British novelist and poet, championed the plight of those who had lost their property in the war. Through his persistent efforts, the British government founded the Canada Company, with Galt as superintendent. The purpose of the company was to buy the clergy and crown land reserves and offer them to settlers at a reasonable price. It was later decided that the clergy reserves would be withdrawn and replaced by a tract of land acquired from the Chippewa Indians. The Huron Tract comprised most of what is now Huron and Perth counties and attracted the pioneers with its lush green hills, great deciduous trees, and many natural waterways. Blanchard Township, part of the tract, was surveyed by the Canada Company in 1839, and lots were offered for sale. The first settler was Thomas Ingersoll, who purchased land at the falls where two streams met. He built a stone grist mill and sawmill, and from that point on, the byword was growth. The population of the fledgling village of Little Falls steadily increased. Many churning mills lined the banks of the two rivers, grinding grain and sawing timber. Prosperous lumbering, potash, and farm machinery businesses developed into what was fast becoming a highly productive area. In 1843, an outcropping of limestone was located at a spot under the present mill dam. This shelf, which created the waterfalls, profoundly affected the town's economy, culture, and architecture. Dozens of small quarries sprang up along the Thames, providing St. Mary's with its prime industry. It was not uncommon for local stonemasons to own their own quarries, and by the 1850s, limestone had become the favorite building material. Italian laborers emigrated to this area to work in the quarries and build the railways. The high-quality limestone was shipped by the Grand Trunk Railway to destinations across Canada and the United States. Perhaps the greatest single influence on the town during the 20th century was the St. Mary's Cement Company. Many of the abandoned limestone quarries were purchased by the company, creating a new industry for the town and surrounding areas. By the late 1800s, dozens of limestone buildings had been completed. Some of the most gifted masons whose craftsmanship graced St. Mary's were the Scots who traveled here after the completion of the Rideau Canal, 500 miles east. These craftsmen built many outstanding residences and large commercial blocks, still in evidence today. impressive stone town hall, medieval in style, was completed in 1891 and is graphic proof of their skills. The local residents are proud of this magnificent structure, which is clearly visible from all corners of the community. The sparkling rivers flowing through the town readily lend themselves to greenbelt areas and serve as ideal locations for parks. In a spirit of community responsibility and good corporate citizenship, the St. Mary's Cement Company officially donated the Horseshoe Quarry to the community in 1983. The quarry and surroundings have been carefully landscaped and transformed into a much appreciated recreation area. Unpolluted water is ideal as a natural playground. The rehabilitation of the grounds has been singled out for high praise and awards. Industry in St. Mary's has not only provided it with a strong economic base, but also left its mark in the beautiful homes and buildings throughout the community. Today is a unique blend of the old and the new. While limestone played an important part in the construction of many homes, brick was also used with pleasant results. The wide range of architectural styles are charmingly reflected throughout the community. Solidly built churches such as these are striking testimony of the place religion plays in the town. St. Mary's had a who's who, it would most certainly include the Right Honorable Arthur Meehan, a former Prime Minister of Canada. Even though his term in office was relatively short, he is still remembered for some of the important legislation he guided through the House of Parliament. Kathleen Rice, an extraordinary Canadian, made her reputation and fortune as prospector and trapper in northern Manitoba. This remarkable woman, who many now consider to be a feminist trailblazer, left her mark as few women of her time were able to do. Thomas Alva Edison, as a young man, worked at the Grand Trunk Railway Station as night operator, before he went on to international acclaim. Many of the original structures still are maintained on the main street of St. Mary's. The first privately owned structure in the community is the M&M Building, designated an historic landmark under the Ontario Heritage Act. The local citizens have been well served by its century-old newspaper, first published in 1856.
My family started the newspaper back in the 1870s. My great-grandfather was involved in the St. Thomas paper, and he moved up to St. Mary's to sort of take times easier, and he bought one of the local papers. There was, as in many communities at that time, there was 2 papers in the town, so he bought the sort of sick and ailing paper, and This was in the early 1890s, and he proceeded to build this paper up till 1928 when it amalgamated with his competition. He had purchased the Journal, and at 1928 he purchased the Argus, so it became St. Mary's Journal-Argus.
The founder and publisher of the Journal Argus was John W. Eady. During an illustrious journalistic career that saw the newspaper singled out as one of the finest weeklies in Canada, he recorded his rich and colorful life in his weekly column as the Rambling Reporter. Local resident Jimmy Blackler has also captured much of the history and drama of his town.
When I started taking pictures, I wasn't too old, and my brother had a camera just similar to this, and what happened, we used to go out for a great many walks, and what would be the first thing you look for to take with you? Why, the camera. When we took pictures, both my brother and myself, we didn't specify any definite or particular thing. Now, several of the pictures you will see are pictures that I'm sure that we'll never get again. Not just the same type of pictures anyway. I would say that I have enjoyed every bit of it. All these things went to make my life a pretty happy one.
The main street of St. Mary's is a showcase for many family-owned or founded businesses, which have served the community for decades. The history of the town wouldn't be complete without the stories which have contributed to the folklore and legend of this area. One of the often repeated is the notorious Big Brick Scam. An enterprising flim-flam man convinced locals that he had a solid gold brick for sale for the bargain basement price of $8,000. He bored 2 holes to prove that the brick was genuine. The dust was pure gold and they were hooked. Following the exchange of money, he hastily left town never to be seen again. Later it was discovered that all they had bought was a cheap alloy. Their embarrassment has given residents much amusement over the years. The gray stone Grecian architecture of the public library, which complements the town hall next door, is a focal point emphasizing the solidarity of this strongly built community. The clock on the original Andrews Jewelers building has announced the time of day for over a century. The store's handsome facade has remained unchanged over the years. For generations, the ladies of St. Mary's have gazed in wonderment, and many family heirlooms have come from this store. Another establishment on Queen Street in 1860, with goods priced as is and satisfaction or money refunded, was the start of the Timothy Eaton empire. Entrepreneur T.A. Russell made his mark in the automotive industry with the Russell car, but is best known for the CCM company and the quality bicycles manufactured. Built in 1880, the Opera House was the center of early culture and social activity. Outstanding artists and performers from both Canada and abroad played to appreciative audiences for over 40 years. Performing on occasion was St. Mary's own Nora Clench, an internationally known violinist. One of St. Mary's most famous buildings, flanked on either side by stone blocks, has been widely admired and well documented. The Opera House, the Town Hall, and many of the other limestone buildings are all part of the cherished heritage of the Stone Town. A settlement with two rivers has a natural need for bridges. The stone Victoria Bridge was completed in 1865 and recently restored in its original style, playing an important role in the commerce of the town. A pleasing time in a pleasant town is the motto of the St. Mary's Fair. An ongoing tradition, the annual fair is a focus of Perth County and attracts visitors from near and wide. The colorful floats and attractions are a blend of the old and the new. Young and old alike partake in the celebration of the opening day parade down Queen Street. Held in July of each year, the fair is a mirror of the surrounding community.
Well, one of the assets of living in St. Mary's is the fact that it's not a city, but it has easy access to the cities around. I've always enjoyed the hills in St. Mary's. The quarry is a great place that used to draw me for years. I'm glad that they fixed the bridge, the Queen Street Bridge, and they kept the shape and as much of the old bridge as they could, because it was one of the oldest in Ontario and part of our stone heritage here in St. Mary's. It's peaceful, and I don't know, it's just part of my whole life. I just wouldn't want to go and live anywhere else.
icy, artesian well water at the Weir Fountain has been quenching the thirst of residents for the last 50 years. Several bridges straddle the Thames and Trout Creek, where St. Mary's found its ideal birthplace. Of the riverbed, affectionately called the Flats, afford a calm and scenic site around which the town has blossomed. These perennial currents are symbolic of the determination of generations of hardy folk who proudly forged a town worth living in.
The flag on our Townhall through the years is flowing free, a tribute to our hometown's history. Our town, wherever I may roam, I'll always have a place that I call home. It's very plain to see there'll always be a part of you in me. There'll always be a part of you in me. There'll always